Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast is your one-stop shop for fantasy football news and advice. Can't decide on who to draft on the first round? Going gaga on how to line up your team. Got you covered. Traditional leagues, dynasty league, PPR league, IDP League, even Daily Fantasy Football League. Join us as we break down all the questions of fantasy football. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast.
Oh, goodness.
Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast is your one-stop shop for fantasy football news and advice. Can't decide on who to draft on the first round? Going gaga on how to line up your team. Got you covered. Traditional leagues, dynasty league, PPR league, IDP League, even Daily Fantasy Football League. Join us as we break down all the questions of fantasy football. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast.
What is good, ladies and gentlemen? Your boy Austin back here, ready to deliver you another episode of the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. This is going to be the Patreon segment where we're going into the last weekday of the week. So obviously we're going to be talking about things that are happening on Sunday. Super excited to talk about these guys and want to give you my best bets for the entire weekend. I've been in the lab pretty much all week looking at these dudes, seeing who's going to perform the best in fantasy football this week in week 6. And I think I got it all figured out. Y'all don't got to worry. I got it all handled. Just, trust me here. Like I said, I probably have spent like 30 to 40 hours in the lab this week. You can tell by my hair I am, locked in, ready to give you this best bets. And then we're also going to look at some of the other matchups that I'm really liking for the week. So make sure you stick with me. Let me know if you guys have any questions or comments. Go ahead and drop those in the comment box so I can answer any of those. Love to answer fantasy football questions in general. Let me fix the camera right here. It's not all up on me. But yeah, guys, let's talk best bets real quick. Super excited to talk about these guys. Like I said, I've been in the lab all week, and these are my favorite gentlemen to get it done in week 6 here. And I'm going to start you off with Cooper Kupp going over 88.5 yards in his matchup. He's going to be playing the Cardinals. This bet just really makes sense in my opinion. I think that he's going to be getting that 10 to 12 targets in this game. And if he's averaging anywhere near that 9 to 10 yards per reception mark, this should be very easy for him. 88.5. If you guys have been following me for the past week or two, I've told you multiple times, Cooper Kupp does this a lot and has averaged 24 fantasy points over the past 3 years in fantasy football, and that means a lot of 100-yard games pending for him. Absolutely see that happening this week. Cardinals defense just gave up 192 yards to Jamar Chase, and Cooper Kupp is on that same level. Regardless of whether you think he is or not, he absolutely is. He is a top 5 receiver in this league, probably absolutely top 10, no question, and one of the most talented fantasy guys in the entire league. So I'll be rocking with him this week against the Arizona Cardinals. 88.5 yards seems pretty free to me and something very playable. So that's going to be number 1. Guys, I've been doing really good on the best bets, so make sure you're tracking me, staying up to date. I think I'm like 60% at the moment, 60 or 70%. I sweeped last week's Thursday Night Football. Didn't do anything for Thursday Night Football this week, but went 4 for 4 last week. Did pretty good on Sunday, so we're trying to keep that train going. And I'm going to keep it going here with Tyreek Hill over 88.5 as well against the Giants. This just seems like another spot that we have to be taking Tyreek Hill. He put up multiple 150-yard performances, so I don't think 90 yards is going to really be too difficult for this guy. He just put up 180 in week 5, and they're only asking for 90 yards in this one against the Giants. The Miami rushing attack is going to be on, so that's the only thing that's kind of scary. But obviously they're without Devon Achane too, who was their most explosive rusher and someone who was taking the touches away from these other guys. I really like Tyreek Hill over 88.5, and we'll be locking that in, no question. Next one we got is Kirk Cousins going over 250.5, and that's feeling pretty easy on the eyes as well. He'll be playing a really bad opponent here in the Chicago Bears, going up against this Bears squad. I fully expect Kirk Cousins to put up at least like a 300-yard day, if not more. Definitely really like Kirk Cousins in this spot, so we're going to take him. That's going to be my 3rd best bet. My 4th here is going to be Bijan Robinson. They got him at 70 rushing yards, and I think that is easy for him this week. If you're listening to my analysis in the live show, I was basically saying that I think he's going to have an easy time getting to the 2nd level. All he's really got to do against this Commander squad is get to the 2nd level. They have a really good front 4 with all those first-rounders, Jonathan Allen, Montez Sweat, Chase Young, all those guys. And if he gets to that 2nd level, I know he's going to be able to juke out a linebacker like we've already seen multiple times. I'm sure a lot of you have seen that Packers clip where he shakes one guy at the 1st level, comes up, shakes the next guy like even worse. And he was a linebacker, goes and gets like 10, 15 extra yards. We only need him to get 70, so that seems pretty easy. He's one of the best running backs in the league already, and I really like Bijan this week against that Commander squad. Khalil Herbert actually popped off for a day even before he was injured in last week's game, so if that means anything, I definitely think Bijan is in for a day on Sunday. So that is my 4th best bet. Then we got TJ Hawkinson for my 5th best bet at 54.5 receiving yards against the Chicago Bears. I'm all over this Vikings offense, even with Justin Jefferson being out. I think TJ Hawkinson is going to eat up. He's going to get those 8 targets, 8 to 10 targets that we're looking for. And they're only asking for 55 yards here. They're only asking for 54 yards for Jordan Addison. So I would definitely maybe sprinkle on that one too. I think either one of these 2 guys are absolutely getting it, or both should probably definitely clear those numbers. Only 55 yards from each of them. That seems too easy. Kirk is a guy who's been throwing the ball like 40, 50 times per game. Only in one game has he gone below like 44 passing attempts. And I do assume that they'll be winning this game. They'll probably look to slow it down a little bit, but 40 passing attempts should be pretty easy for Kirk here. And thinking that Hawkinson and Jordan Addison will be the main contributors there. So those are my 5th and 6th best bets. The Vikings offense, all over them for sure. Then we got Matt Stafford going up against Cardinals. Same reasons as Cooper Kupp. They got him at 277.5, and he's had 300 yards in 3 of his 5 games. This is a beautiful spot for him. Joe Burrow just went for 300 yards against this defense, and they were looking pretty scared out there versus good receivers. We might be seeing one of the best wide receiver duos in the entire league with the Los Angeles Rams, Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp. That situation is definitely really good for Matt Stafford, and I was calling him Golden Arm. I'm definitely going to stick to that. I think Golden Arm can do 277.5 for sure. Got him going over 300 in this game, most likely. Then finally, they don't have, at least on FanDuel, Tony Pollard's numbers up, but I'm definitely going to take him for his rushing yards against the Los Angeles Chargers. They rank terribly in PFF, so I'm not afraid to take Tony Pollard against the Chargers. I think that's going to be a sweet spot for him, and definitely going to get the touches. To be seen if he's going to do more in the receiving game rather than the rushing game. And I'll probably like his receiving yards as well. But I know that he's going to get the carries, probably 15 to 20 in this game against the Chargers, and I expect that it will be close because the Chargers' offense is so good and their defense is so bad. They'll probably put up a couple points on this Dallas defense if I had to guess. But I like Tony Pollard to be the biggest contributor in this game on both sides of the ball. So those are going to be my 7 best bets that I'm giving y'all. Hope y'all like them. And when we come back, we're just going to talk a little bit about some matchups that I haven't talked about so far this week. Guys, really no time to waste. There's no need to take a long break here. Let's get right into my next segment where I'm going to be talking about some more matchups that I like. Friday's always the matchups episode, so we're always going to be talking about, players in good spots that we can take in DFS or that we like in fantasy football, things of that nature. If you want to bet on them, you go ahead and do that. And I'm just trying to provide you with that roadmap. So first, I haven't really talked about Philly this week. Philly going up against the New York Jets. And New York Jets have been giving up a decent amount of points on their defense, most likely because their offense has been so lackluster. And Zach Wilson is obviously the quarterback. They're not converting on a ton of their drives. Last week they were a bit more successful because Breece Hall carried the entire squad to the win with his 170-yard performance. But don't really see that happening against this pretty solid front four and a pretty solid linebacking core that the Eagles have. So Zach Wilson's going to have to, be passing the ball. That means the clock is going to be stopped a lot, and that means the ball is probably going to be in Jalen Hurts' hands for most of the time. And I do like this Eagles offense going up against the Jets. Obviously, A.J. Brown going to have a test here with Sauce Gardner. I think Sauce Gardner this year so far, I've seen him get caught on way more than last year, and it seems like he's taken a step back a little bit at the cornerback position. So I'll still like A.J. Brown. This really could be a Devontae Smith game to where if the Jets secondary are just like, nah, A.J. Brown's not going to beat us, then Devontae Smith can beat you just as well. And it's probably a pretty big spot for him here where, he's not going to be getting nearly as much attention. These last 2 weeks in fantasy, he hasn't been performing to, I know, his liking and, the whole team's liking. And I know he wants to get back on track there, have that 1,000-yard season that I'm sure that he has contract incentives for. So I really could like Devontae Smith more than A.J. Brown possibly in this matchup too. New York Jets have a pretty solid linebacking core, truthfully, with like C.J. Mosley, guys like that. So Goddard might be off the board. I think the guy that we're looking at here is going to be Devontae Smith in the New York Jets versus the Philadelphia Eagles game, in my opinion. Then I think we got to talk about Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, that situation. They're going to be playing up against Seattle, and they get to play them at home. This is pretty much another must-win spot. They've kind of got themselves into a spot where they are going to have must-win games throughout the season now because they've already dropped so many ones early. And I think they could probably get that done here against Seattle. Don't think it's above them to do that. This is one of the better offenses in the league as far as personnel goes. Joe Mixon's looking extra bursty. Jamar Chase coming off one of his best games that he's ever played in the league so far. Joe Burrow put in another week of practice where he wasn't on the injury report, so love that. I think both of these offenses, though, will have a decent time. Cincinnati's defense has not been the best, and they're reeling a little bit, just to a bad start from the season. They're going to have to go up against DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett. DK Metcalf, absolute matchup nightmare. And if you don't have a big corner or a fast corner, a real physical corner that can get down with DK Metcalf, then it's going to be a bad day. I really don't think the Cincinnati Bengals have a guy that can take care of business with DK Metcalf or probably Tyler Lockett. So I see Geno Smith, throwing the ball around the field, having a good time, and then probably mixing up that run pass so they can set up the play action there with Kenneth Walker, who's such a strong runner. I'm looking here at the cornerbacks for the Cincinnati Bengals. Their best guy, Chidobe Awuzie, currently questionable too, and that's definitely not going to be a good sign for them. Their other cornerback, Cam Taylor-Britt, has nowhere near the physicality of a guy like DK Metcalf, so I love that spot for the Bengals offense. And then I'm also liking the Bengals offense, and then I'm also liking the Seahawks offense as well. And yeah, they're the ones with Cam Taylor-Britt, all those guys that probably cannot match up with DK Metcalf. Moving on, make sure to talk about these games that I haven't really talked about yet. I talked about Miami versus Carolina. Talked about San Francisco versus Cleveland earlier in the week. Kind of talked about this Atlanta game with Atlanta playing Washington, and Atlanta just loves to run the ball. They have the highest rushing tendency of any other team in the league, and they're getting 60% on their home field versus Washington Commanders. Kind of interesting. I think the Commanders probably are a bit more talented on offense besides Bijan Robinson. He's the major factor. I think if he was sitting out, this would be a complete shift where it would be 60-40 for the Commanders. But I can understand because apparently the Falcons are better at home. I just really don't like Desmond Ridder. And I think he's going to fail to convert on third down most of the time here. I think he's going to be pressured, and that front four, Jonathan Allen, Chase Young, guys like that are going to be getting to him a lot and being in his face. He's either going to be forced to check down or check out and get sacked. I think those are really his only two options, so you better hope Bijan Robinson has his receiving hat on for this one. But I think I like the Washington Commanders offense here more than I like the Falcons offense just because of their personnel. I would have to find it hard to imagine that Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson both do not get it done for this many weeks in a row. Obviously, Terry McLaurin had a good week 4, had like 8 catches for 86 yards in that one. But other than that, hasn't made too much fantasy noise, and we do expect more from the Ohio State product. Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson has been extra quiet, seeing a lot of people drop him in fantasy leagues from league to league. So I don't think that'll continue. I think Jahan is a very talented guy. We saw him catch a ton of touchdowns last year, and I do expect him to get more touchdown luck moving throughout the season. I like the Commanders over the Falcons there for sure, and I like their fantasy offense much more as well. Maybe let's talk about one more. Let's talk about Baltimore. Baltimore going to be playing over in Tottenham, London, and they're getting 70% against the Tennessee Titans. Tennessee Titans not looking the best, but DeAndre Hopkins finally coming on a little bit. DeAndre is definitely going to be like the focal point of this Ravens defense on the Ravens secondary. Marlon Humphrey, obviously very talented corner, has his own podcast, likes to talk a lot, and I'm sure he talks a lot of trash on the field. And he'll have his hands full there with DeAndre Hopkins. DeAndre had like 13 targets last week and went over 125 yards. For the first time all season. I expect that that's going to continue happening. DeAndre Hopkins still a top 10 receiver in my eyes. Just because he switched teams doesn't really mean anything to me. Tannehill's got to gel with him and work with him to make sure that he is involved in that offense, because obviously Derrick Henry can't do it all. Super weird, actually. Derrick Henry played the same amount of snaps as Tajay Spears, his backup, last week in week 5. Obviously because they were down a little bit, so they needed to work back, and Tajay's more of a receiving back, or a guy who has more talent catching the ball out of the backfield, but still very elusive. I don't mind you starting Tajay Spears maybe this week if you're desperate at the flex position. Definitely don't hate that just because of his elusiveness. I've been on him since the beginning of the year and was loving his highlights from Tulane, I believe was his college. Tulane, something like that. Very good back and very elusive, so don't mind you starting him in any way. But I do like the Ravens offense way more here. They're dealing with a little bit of injury. Odell, obviously, up in the air here. He's not listed on the current injury report right now. They were dealing with a ton of drops with guys like Rashad Bateman dropping the ball, Mark Andrews dropping the ball, Zay Flowers dropping the ball. Everybody was dropping the ball last week for the Ravens, so hopefully they can shore that up. This should be a pretty easy win, in my opinion, for the Ravens, and I like their fantasy offense to go crazy, mostly like Lamar to go crazy and run all over the field. Titans are pretty much known for their run defense and not letting the running back get off. And it's not like the Ravens have that talented of a running back there with Gus Edwards or Justice Hill, both really mid-tier guys in my opinion. So I think Lamar is going to be the one to pick up that rushing attack, and then they'll need to pass the ball too. So Zay Flowers can't be a ghost in that offense anymore. Rashad Bateman can't drop any more balls, and I think that they're going to end up getting it done there over in London in the 7:30 game. Guys, if there's no more questions or comments or anything like that, I'm going to hop off of here. I appreciate y'all for checking it out. Make sure you're back on Monday, 7 p.m., because we're going to be going live again, and we will be for the rest of the season, I promise. All right, guys, see you later.